Welcome to this transformative self-coaching program designed to help you integrate and heal the pattern and beliefs of struggling to form deep connections, feeling isolated and unfulfilled. This is an emotional EMDR mini course whose goal is to guide you through a process of understanding, reframing, and building resilience to this pattern or belief. It is recommended that you use this program in full screen mode, while sitting still and upright. Follow the movements of the ball or pattern on the screen with your eyes. As the words from the audio are spoken, notice the feelings they evoke in your body and any mental images that may arise. If your mind starts to wander, gently redirect your focus back to the moving ball or pattern. Optionally, or if you are not able to use video, you can also tap on one or more EFT points. How it works. In step 1, we evoke the distressful emotional state of the belief or pattern. Note: this can be emotionally triggering. Take full responsibility for your well-being. In step 2, we offer ourselves loving, compassionate self-acceptance for this state and beliefs. We then reframe the belief, pattern or state with new positive suggestions to the mind. We then bridge the mind into the new, more positive reality. We finally express gratitude for the new positive reality, taking it as fact. Ready. Section 1. Unpacking emotional experiences. We begin with a setup of the issue. Even though I struggle with this pattern, I choose to still deeply love, honor and accept myself, and I am open to a more empowering state of being. Take a deep breath. I constantly struggle with forming deep connections, leaving me with only superficial relationships. I often feel isolated, as I'm unable to maintain lasting friendships. My relationships are mostly functional, lacking emotional depth. Casual intimacy is all I seem capable of, never forming meaningful bonds. I find myself mostly self-isolated, struggling to reach out to others. Most of my relationships are fleeting, rarely evolving past acquaintances. I feel a void due to the lack of deep and lasting friendships in my life. My inability to maintain relationships affects my self-esteem and happiness. I often feel unworthy of love due to my chronic relationship failures. The fear of rejection keeps me from forming close relationships. I struggle with trust, which hinders my ability to connect deeply with others. I feel a sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by people. My life lacks the richness of deep and fulfilling friendships. I yearn for meaningful connections but find myself repeatedly disappointed. My pattern of brief relationships leaves me feeling unfulfilled. I often question my worthiness of having lasting friendships. The superficiality of my relationships leaves me craving more. I feel disconnected from others, struggling to find common ground. My self-isolation seems like a protective shield, but it's also a prison. I envy those with close friendships, feeling like an outsider. I feel trapped in a cycle of short-lived relationships. The lack of deep connections makes me question my social skills. I often feel misunderstood and alone in my thoughts and feelings. I worry that I'll never experience the joy of a deep, lasting friendship. My relationship failures make me doubt my ability to connect with others. I feel like I'm missing out on an essential part of human experience. The fleeting nature of my relationships is emotionally draining. I often feel helpless in breaking this cycle of superficial connections. I crave emotional intimacy but find it elusive in my relationships. I feel like an observer in my social circles, not an active participant. My self-imposed isolation makes it hard to reach out for help. I fear that my pattern of failed relationships will never change. I struggle with feeling invisible and unimportant in social settings. I dread social interactions, fearing they'll only lead to more disappointment. I feel a deep sense of sadness over my inability to form deep connections. Section 2. Feel into this balanced, compassionate perspective from your inner coach. Maintain your attention on the EMDR screen, following the movements of the shape or pattern with your eyes. I welcome my struggle with forming deep connections and understand its complexity. I gently acknowledge my feelings of isolation, recognizing their impact on me. I embrace the functional nature of my relationships, understanding their limitations. I accept my pattern of casual intimacy, seeing it as part of my current journey. I compassionately recognize my tendency to self-isolate, knowing it's part of my process. I lovingly observe my fleeting relationships, understanding they reflect my current state. I hold space for my longing for deep friendships, acknowledging its importance to me. I warmly accept the impact of my relationship challenges on my self-esteem. I lovingly acknowledge my feelings of unworthiness, understanding they are part of my story. I compassionately embrace my fear of rejection, seeing it as part of my human experience. I gently accept my struggles with trust, recognizing their roots and impact. I hold my feelings of loneliness with kindness, understanding their depth. I compassionately see my life's lack of fulfilling friendships, acknowledging my desire for more. I lovingly observe my yearning for meaningful connections, seeing it as a sign of my depth. I accept my pattern of brief relationships, recognizing its role in my life. I kindly acknowledge my questions about my worthiness, understanding their origin. I hold my craving for deeper connections with gentle acceptance. I compassionately recognize my feelings of disconnection, knowing it's a step towards growth. I warmly embrace my self-isolation as a protective mechanism, while acknowledging its downsides. I gently acknowledge my envy of close friendships, understanding it reflects my desires. I lovingly hold space for my cycle of short-lived relationships, seeing it as part of my journey. I compassionately accept my doubts about my social skills, recognizing them as areas for growth. I warmly embrace my feelings of being misunderstood, knowing they are part of my experience. I lovingly accept my worries about never having deep friendships, recognizing them as concerns to address. I compassionately hold my doubts about connecting with others, understanding they stem from my experiences. I gently acknowledge the feeling of missing out, seeing it as a sign of my longing for connection. I compassionately recognize the emotional drain of fleeting relationships, understanding its impact. I warmly accept my feelings of helplessness in breaking my current patterns, seeing them as a starting point for change. I lovingly hold my craving for emotional intimacy, understanding its importance in my life. I compassionately observe my role as an observer in social situations, acknowledging my desire to engage more. I gently embrace my difficulty in reaching out, seeing it as part of my current challenges. I warmly acknowledge my fear of unchanging relationship patterns, understanding it as a concern to be explored. I compassionately recognize my feelings of invisibility in social settings, knowing they are part of my current reality. I lovingly accept my dread of social interactions, seeing it as an opportunity for growth. I hold my sadness over the inability to form deep connections with kindness, understanding its depth. Section 3. Visualizing positive change. Take a deep breath. I am choosing now to embrace new ways of building deeper connections in my relationships. I am open to discovering how to transform my feelings of isolation into opportunities for connection. I could consider nurturing my functional relationships into more meaningful ones. It would be nice if I could evolve my casual intimacies into more profound connections. I am willing to explore ways to step out of self-isolation and engage more with others. I have the opportunity to create lasting relationships, learning from each fleeting encounter. I am capable of nurturing deep friendships that are enriching and fulfilling. I embrace the idea of improving my self-esteem by working on my relationship skills. I am ready to recognize and embrace my worthiness of love and deep connections. I am beginning to see the value in confronting and overcoming my fear of rejection. I am receptive to building trust in my relationships for deeper connections. I am shifting towards feeling connected and included, even in larger groups. I am open-minded about enriching my life with fulfilling and supportive friendships. I am allowing myself to believe in the possibility of forming meaningful connections. I can imagine transforming my brief relationships into long-lasting, fulfilling ones. It might be beneficial to explore my feelings of worthiness and strengthen my self-belief. I am prepared to seek deeper connections beyond the superficial layers of my relationships. I am choosing to focus on finding common ground and connecting deeply with others. I am open to the possibility of turning my self-isolation into meaningful engagement with others. I can see the potential for forming close friendships and overcoming feelings of envy. I am becoming more aware of the ways to nurture and sustain long-term relationships. I am starting to believe in my ability to develop and improve my social skills. I am ready to let go of feeling misunderstood and open myself to being known and understood. I am exploring the idea of welcoming deep and lasting friendships into my life. I am creating space for confident and successful connections with others. I am entertaining the thought of fully engaging in the human experience of deep connection. I am willing to consider ways to make my relationships more emotionally fulfilling and less draining. I am opening myself up to breaking old patterns and forming meaningful connections. I am giving myself permission to seek and find emotional intimacy in my relationships. I can see the advantages of actively participating and engaging in my social circles. I am open to discovering ways to reach out and connect with others for support. I am beginning to see the value in changing my relationship patterns for the better. I am ready to embrace visibility and importance in my social interactions. I am considering different ways to approach social interactions with optimism and hope. I am choosing to release my sadness and open up to the possibility of deep, meaningful connections. Section 4. Bridging the two worlds from emotion to aspiration. Remember to maintain your focus on the EMDR screen, following the movements of the shape or pattern with your eyes. Even though I constantly struggle with forming deep connections, I welcome this challenge and am choosing now to embrace new ways of building deeper relationships. Although I often feel isolated, I gently acknowledge these feelings and am open to discovering how to transform them into opportunities for connection. While my relationships are mostly functional, I embrace their limitations and could consider nurturing them into more meaningful ones. Despite my pattern of casual intimacy, I accept this part of my journey and am envisioning evolving these into profound connections. Even though I find myself self-isolated, I compassionately recognize this tendency and am willing to explore ways to engage more with others. Although my relationships are fleeting, I lovingly observe this pattern and am ready to create lasting connections, learning from each encounter. While I long for deep friendships, I hold space for this longing and am capable of nurturing enriching and fulfilling friendships. Even though my inability to maintain relationships affects my self-esteem, I warmly accept this impact and embrace improving my relationship skills. Although I feel unworthy of love, I lovingly acknowledge these feelings and am ready to embrace my worthiness of deep connections. Despite my fear of rejection, I compassionately embrace this fear and am beginning to see the value in overcoming it. Even though I struggle with trust, I gently accept these struggles and am receptive to building trust for deeper connections. While I feel a sense of loneliness, I hold these feelings with kindness and am shifting towards feeling connected and included. Although my life lacks fulfilling friendships, I compassionately see this lack and am open-minded about enriching my life with supportive friendships. Despite my yearning for meaningful connections, I lovingly observe this yearning and am allowing myself to believe in the possibility of forming them. Even though my relationships are brief, I accept this pattern and can imagine transforming them into long-lasting, fulfilling connections. While I often question my worthiness, I kindly acknowledge these questions and am exploring my feelings of worthiness to strengthen my self-belief. Although my relationships feel superficial, I hold my craving for deeper connections and am prepared to seek beyond the superficial layers. Even though I feel disconnected from others, I compassionately recognize this feeling and am choosing to focus on finding common ground for deeper connections. Despite my self-isolation acting as a protective shield, I warmly embrace this mechanism and am open to turning it into meaningful engagement with others. Although I envy those with close friendships, I gently acknowledge this envy and can see the potential for forming such friendships myself. While I feel trapped in a cycle of short-lived relationships, I lovingly hold space for this cycle and am becoming more aware of nurturing long-term relationships. Even though I doubt my social skills, I compassionately accept these doubts and am starting to believe in my ability to develop and improve these skills. Despite feeling misunderstood and alone, I warmly embrace these feelings and am ready to let go of them, opening myself to being known and understood. Although I worry about never experiencing deep friendships, I lovingly accept these worries and am exploring the idea of welcoming lasting friendships into my life. Even though my relationship failures make me doubt my ability to connect, I compassionately hold these doubts and am creating space for confident connections with others. While I feel like I'm missing out on deep connections, I gently acknowledge this feeling and am entertaining the thought of fully engaging in the human experience of connection. Even though my relationships are emotionally draining, I compassionately recognize this and am willing to consider ways to make them more fulfilling and less draining. Although I often feel helpless in breaking my current patterns, I warmly accept these feelings and am opening myself up to forming meaningful connections. Despite craving emotional intimacy but finding it elusive, I lovingly hold this craving and am giving myself permission to seek and find it in my relationships. While I feel like an observer in social circles, I compassionately observe this role and can see the advantages of actively participating and engaging more. Even though my self-imposed isolation makes it hard to reach out, I gently embrace this difficulty and am open to discovering ways to connect with others for support. Although I fear that my pattern of failed relationships will never change, I warmly acknowledge this fear and am beginning to see the value in changing these patterns for the better. While I struggle with feeling invisible in social settings, I compassionately recognize this feeling and am ready to embrace visibility and importance in my interactions. Despite dreading social interactions, I lovingly accept this dread and am considering different ways to approach them with optimism and hope. Even though I feel a deep sadness over my inability to form deep connections, I hold this sadness with kindness and am choosing to release it, opening up to the possibility of meaningful connections. If you were tapping, you can stop as we go into gratitude. Section 5. Preemptive gratitude for transformation. These affirmations are designed to uplift your spirit, align you with your highest self, and resonate with the boundless love and support that the universe offers you. I am grateful for the newfound depth and meaning in my relationships. I appreciate my journey from isolation to connection, feeling supported by the universe. I am thankful for transforming my superficial relationships into meaningful ones. I am grateful for evolving my casual connections into deep and lasting bonds. I cherish my courage to step out of self-isolation and engage with the world. I am thankful for each fleeting relationship that taught me valuable lessons. I am grateful for the deep and enriching friendships now present in my life. I appreciate the growth in my self-esteem and the joy of meaningful connections. I am thankful for recognizing my worthiness of love and deep relationships. I appreciate overcoming my fear of rejection and embracing vulnerability. I am grateful for the trust I've built in my relationships, enhancing my connections. I cherish the feeling of being connected and included in my social circles. I am thankful for the fulfilling and supportive friendships that enrich my life. I appreciate the realization of my potential to form meaningful connections. I am grateful for transforming my brief relationships into lasting, fulfilling ones. I cherish exploring my worthiness and strengthening my self-belief. I am thankful for deepening my connections beyond superficial interactions. I appreciate finding common ground and deeply connecting with others. I am grateful for turning self-isolation into meaningful engagement and connection. I cherish forming close friendships and overcoming feelings of envy. I appreciate the nurturing and sustaining of long-term, meaningful relationships. I am grateful for developing and improving my social skills, enhancing my connections. I cherish being understood and feeling a sense of belonging in my relationships. I am thankful for the deep, lasting friendships that have entered my life. I appreciate confidently connecting with others and building strong relationships. I am grateful for fully engaging in the human experience of deep connection. I cherish making my relationships more emotionally fulfilling and less draining. I appreciate breaking old patterns and forming meaningful connections. I am thankful for finding and nurturing emotional intimacy in my relationships. I cherish actively participating and engaging in my social circles. I appreciate the courage to reach out and connect with others for support. I am grateful for the positive changes in my relationship patterns. I cherish the visibility and importance I now feel in my social interactions. I appreciate approaching social interactions with optimism and hope. I am grateful for overcoming sadness and opening up to deep, meaningful connections. Section 6. Closing and next steps. Take a deep, rejuvenating breath. Congratulations on completing this transformative session. Take a note of how you feel in comparison to how you started, and consider journaling your notes about this session and any areas you'd like to explore. Be attentive to the potential reduction in the emotional weight of certain memories and actual circumstance shifts in your daily life. Note that it may take one, several, or many uses of this program to completely clear or reframe this pattern and beliefs. This program and affirmations serve to fortify your inner journey toward a more empowered state. Feel free to revisit them whenever you need to. For more details, see the link in the bio or description below.